Mr. Speaker, we're here today to talk about poverty, but before we get to that, I want to ask you, you endorsed Donald Trump last week. It's been about a week. How's that sitting?
Well, it could be better. Obviously, you've heard me disavow the comments regarding this judge. I don't think that those are appropriate comments by any stretch of the mind. Hopefully this is an inflection point. Hopefully a lesson will be learned here and we can move forward with a better campaign. That's my hope going forward.
Senator Sass, Hillary Clinton has called those racist comments. Do you agree?
No, I do think that those comments are racist comments. That's why I've disavowed them completely. What bothers me about the comments is it doesn't reflect who we are, what we think, or how we think as Republicans. It's antithetical to what we believe and our principles. And so hopefully he'll not only not continue to say these things, but learn from this and move forward and then offer the country a positive vision that's inclusive, that speaks to people's higher ideals.
Explain what that means. It's not what we believe. Because I think some people get confused about, they hear labels and all that. What to you is kind of
We believe in equality. We believe that the notion that someone's ethnicity or race affects the way they do their job is completely the opposite of what we believe. We believe in equality of opportunity. Look, the Republican Party was founded in a schoolhouse in Ripon, Wisconsin by abolitionists. Our first president was Abraham Lincoln. So we are the party of Lincoln, the party of Reagan, the party of equality, the party of upward mobility. And so that is what we think, that's what we feel. And so when comments run contrary to that, it's incumbent upon us as party leaders to call them out.
You're trying to sell an agenda, make a case for policies based on examination of evidence and that kind of thing. How do you do that while this is not the first time you've had to speak out about the nominee of your party?
Right.
How do you do those two things if you're constantly having to put out fires or address them in the way you just
Well, I'm kind of learning as I go. I believe in this job I have as Speaker of the House that it's important that I help unify our party so that we're at full strength in the fall so that we can win an election. And what I believe we in the House can help do are bring ideas to the table, bring an agenda to the table, bring a vision. And we're laying out our ideas starting today, 6 critical reforms that we call a better way, because we think we owe the country a choice of a better way forward. But when anyone in our party, at least especially our nominee, says things that run contrary to our beliefs, to our values, to our principles, we have an obligation to call them out. We have an obligation to not support those things because they don't define who we are. But what we hopefully can achieve is offering the country a clear agenda going forward. And I do believe, and the reason I did endorse him is because I believe this agenda has a far, far, far greater chance of being made into law to improve people's lives than it would be under President Clinton.
When I talked to Donald Trump last week about his agenda, he still talked about the building the wall, deporting the 11 million undocumented immigrants, and this temporary Muslim ban. He comes into office, if he's elected, as you hope, he brings that to Paul Ryan, Speaker of the House. What do you say?
Oh, I've been pretty clear about that. I obviously don't support the Muslim ban. I do not think we should have a religious test on people coming to this country. We should have a security test, but not a religious test. The reason I say that is as a conservative, because I believe in the First Amendment. I believe in religious freedom. I believe in religious liberty. It is one of the cornerstone principles of our country's founding. It's why people came here in the first place, but more importantly, it's the First Amendment of our Constitution. So I will steadfastly defend those principles. But there are also other policies and ideas that I know he will support, that I know he will advance. And the one thing I know for certain is Hillary Clinton won't help us support any of them.
You've talked to him. You've said that in coming to your support of him, it was based on these conversations. Did you have policy conversations? And if so, about what?
Yes, about all of these things. Look, I've spoken to him about the Muslim ban and how I disagree with it. About the deportation. I don't support that. He said, well, that's not part of our agenda. But I've spoken to him about our agenda that we're rolling out. How we balance the budget, how we grow the economy, what we replace Obamacare with, how we move people from welfare to work. What does a sound national security strategy actually look like? And so there's clearly more common ground here. There's more common principle than what we would have with the alternative. We have one of two choices this fall, as I see it. Hillary Clinton, Donald Trump. I know without a shred of doubt that Hillary Clinton will not support any of these policies or principles.
Do you give him any advice in these conversations?
I do. I give him probably more advice than he wants. But
like along what lines?
Well, look, I think personal conversations should remain personal, and I've made my points very clear on the kinds of comments. Look, I have spoken out in the past against comments that I think are wrong, that don't reflect our principles or our values as conservatives, as Republicans, as Americans. And I'll continue to do that. Hopefully won't have to continue doing that.
You're very focused on the issue of poverty. What if Donald Trump, given his talent for manipulating the news cycle, suddenly started talking about that issue, the way that you've cared so much about? Would you like to see that?
Yes, I would love to see that. I would love to see the bully pulpit that comes with running for president, the presidency, focused on poverty. What we have laid out here today is a very comprehensive agenda to go at the root causes of poverty, to help break the cycle of poverty, to get people out of poverty, to reacquire the American idea, which is the condition of your birth doesn't determine the outcome of your life. We believe work works. We believe we have to have work incentives. We believe that the current welfare system has basically, unintended, but has basically replaced work and has disincentivized work, and that keeps people out of getting on their feet again. It keeps people out of the escalator to get out of poverty. So there are a lot of ideas and principles that we want to talk about, and we want and would love to see our nominee talk about these things. He and I have had a number of conversations about welfare reform, about the need to fight poverty, and I found that he was very receptive to those points and those principles.
When I asked Donald Trump why people are poor, he said, well, they don't have jobs. Is it that simple?
Well, that's a big part of it. You have to have jobs. That's why a big part of our agenda going forward is going to show how we restore a faster growing economy that produces more jobs, better wages, higher take-home pay. But no, it's not just that simple. That's what we talked about today. It's about getting people to work, but it's also getting people prepared to work, skills. And also there are a lot of issues that people are dealing with. Poverty comes in many different forms, addiction, homelessness. There are lots of problems. The point we're making here is this sort of one-size-fits-all, top-down approach from Washington is failing us. We need more of a bottom-up approach. We need a community approach. And we need to support those poverty fighters in our communities who are actually fighting poverty person to person, eye to eye, soul to soul. Like we're filming this right here in Anacostia, a suburb of Washington, D.C., a very poor area. But Bishop Shirley Holloway, who has shown us, this is my third time here, she has shown us that she knows how to help people help themselves get out of poverty. So it's really personal, it's community. There's an important role for government to play, but it's also about getting the incentives right. And I think the government has made a mistake by treating symptoms of poverty than going at the root causes of poverty, by displacing community fighters, by having a top-down approach, which has failed us miserably.
Let me ask you about the work requirement. What some people who are critical of focusing too much on that say is, if somebody has a job, they need to have flexible pay. They need some time for family leave to take care of challenges they've got in their home situation. They need work schedules that they can find that are predictable. They need a set of other policies in place that make that having a job isn't where it stops. Where do you feel
I think
about
these
that?
criticisms come from the same mindset, which is we can micromanage a person's life and the economy from Washington. We've been doing that for years. It doesn't work. So I think the better way is to have an open economy that's an organic economy that produces more opportunity and better jobs. And the question is, can we do a better job of helping people get the skills they need, the training they need to get the kind of job they want so they can have the life that they want, so they can reach their potential? Having more top-down micromanagement from Washington, more regulations that sacrifice the economy, that actually put slow growth policies in place, that's not going to work. So if we stick with the top-down Washington knows best approach, then we'll have a flat economy with few opportunities. If we get rid of that approach and actually focus on the person themselves and help them get to where they want to be, work does work. And helping people get the skills they need, the training they need to fight the problems that they have so that they can actually get better jobs, that's what we're trying to accomplish here.
So skills is something you've talked about with all these people, but if skills is something that's common to all people who need to get lifted out of poverty, why aren't these other things also common? These other things that you say are part of the top-down approach, why aren't they also the kinds of things that helping people get out of poverty that should be available?
Well, if you take a look at the Washington approach, you basically stack up all of these benefits on top of each other. And what ends up happening is we've created this poverty trap. So if you're a person who is low income, who has lots of benefits, and you want to take that step forward by getting a job, or you have a job and you get a raise, you'll lose something like 80 to 90 cents on the dollar by taking that step forward. And what we do as a consequence is we trap people where they are. We trap people in poverty. We want to end the poverty trap. We want to make work always pay. And we also want to focus on root causes. And Washington can't do that. People do that. Communities do that. And root causes are different for each person. Maybe it's addiction. Maybe it's a health problem. Maybe it's a family situation. The point I'm trying to make is top-down, Washington knows best, is creating a poverty trap that is keeping people stuck where they are in poverty, disincentivizing work, and we need to change that. We need to always encourage and incentivize work and what it takes to get a person to get a good job, to get a good life.
You've spent a lot of time out looking at this problem. You talk a lot about listening to people and not just talking to them. Where do you see common ground with the people who still believe in the policies that you say aren't working? Where's the common ground?
Yeah, well, I just passed a law with Patty Murray on evidence-based policymaking. So I believe there's a bipartisan support. Well, I've proven that there's bipartisan support, but I believe there's more fruit to be born here, which is let's measure success based on results and outcomes, not based on inputs. So we're in the middle of doing that as well. Criminal justice reform is something that we're trying to move just this year in 2016. That's something that we're working on to help try and basically bring redemption back into society. Not just to bring redemption back into society in our communities, but to make sure that our laws are redemptive themselves. So I think there are some reforms that we have common ground on, but at the end of the day, I think there's a different approach here. There's the top-down, Washington knows best approach, and there's the bottom-up community approach to fighting poverty. And that doesn't mean to say government doesn't have a role to play. Government should have a role to play. And government can and should bring a lot of resources to the table. But at the end of the day, we should be backing the community leaders who are actually the experts in fighting poverty in our local communities and not displacing them. And I think that's been one of the casualties in this war on poverty.
What about the existing safety net? Evidence that some of your critics would point to that would say there are parts of the existing safety net that aren't just about treating poverty in the symptoms, but they actually do create a baseline level.
That's why we say let's measure success based on outcomes. And if something's working, great, let's go with that. But if something's not working, let's not keep repeating the same mistakes. Defund what doesn't work, fund what does work. That's our entire approach, which is evidence-based, outcome-based. And so, yes, there are things that work well. The federal overhaul of the homeless programs about a decade ago worked really, really well. I think the EITC, it needs to be reformed, but I think it's a good incentive program that helps people ease their pathway into work. So there are good things we do. I'm not saying everything government does is wrong, but I am saying that the overall approach, which is top-down, not bottom-up, which displaces and discourages work, is the wrong approach, and that's why we're proposing a better way today.
You've said that you know that Hillary Clinton won't support the kinds of programs that you and Donald Trump support, and that that's just a truth. On these issues of poverty, Hillary Clinton spent a lot of time when she got out of college working with young kids who are falling through the system. She has committed her life to programs you may say are top-down and ineffective. But do you really think that somebody who spent that much time working on these issues would be less able to work with you on this project of yours on poverty than Donald Trump?
I wouldn't say she's ill-motivated. I just disagree with her conclusions. She comes from a political philosophy that does believe in top-down. With liberal progressives, which is she's running as one, they believe that we need to take more power and money away from people, families, and communities and send it to Washington so that distant bureaucracies can micromanage these facets of our society and our economy. So it's a general approach and philosophy and ideology that I completely disagree with, that I don't think works. And that is why we as conservatives are offering a better way forward.
Last question. Will you still serve as the chairman of the Republican
Yeah, I am the chairman of the Republican convention. Donald asked me to continue serving in that capacity. I do intend and plan on serving as the chairman of the convention. That is what the Speaker of the House does. It comes with the job.
All right, Paul Ryan, thanks so much.
Thanks, John.